Why do Filipinos look down on each other?
Favorite animal would have to be hippopotamus. Hippopotamus. Sayang magiling. Ay, Philippines.
And if you've ever caught yourself mocking that promdi, like that thick provincial accent, or maybe you've noticed a family member automatically assuming that a bag or a pair of shoes or even education is instantly better just because it came from the United States. And I know that you see it everywhere when whether you're at the homeland or here at the diaspora, we pack imported canvas grocery bags, for instance, like right, like the Trader Joe's bag. It's such a trend right now. Like we pack them into the balikbayan boxes to send home as ultimate status symbols. But why do we do these things? Why do we sometimes look down on our culture while elevating Western standards? So today I'm going to name this invisible weight, and again, this is not just a personal quirk, it's actually a measurable psychological condition called colonial mentality. And in this video, we are going to talk about how centuries of colonization didn't just extract our resources, it actually altered our minds. And more importantly, we are going to talk about how we heal through Psikolohiyang Pilipino, our indigenous Filipino psychology. To understand our behavior today, we have to look at the historical mirror we've been forced to look into. So, when researchers E.J.R. David, for instance, and Sumi Okazaki developed the Colonial Mentality Scale for Filipino Americans, they identified this phenomenon as an internalized oppression. And then they said that it manifested by the common preference for anything made in the United States and by the regard of white physical characteristics as more attractive or advantageous and desirable. This isn't just about preferring imported chocolates, for instance, or your favorite Nike or Adidas shoes. It goes much, much deeper than that because it really causes us to discriminate against less Americanized Filipinos to distance ourselves from our own roots. And the sad part of all this is like we try to run away from our own identity, and what that does is it damages our own mental health. And again, this is something that I went through when I was growing up in the Philippines. I wanted to be like the mestiza actresses that I see in the billboards of EDSA, or my friends who are kind of like on the fairer side, or like yung mas mapuputi, right? Mas matangos ang ilong. And it really impacted me and my own mental wellness growing up. And again, according to research by Dr. Jan Estrelado and her colleagues, harboring these colonial beliefs creates massive psychological distress. And they found that participants that endorsed higher levels of within group discrimination also reported higher levels of experiential avoidance. So, what does that mean in plain English? It means that when we mock the promdi or the fresh off the boat immigrant, and I was one of those, the Filipino Americans in here when I first arrived, they called me FOB. So when we do this, we are actually engaging in experiential avoidance, and we are pushing our own Filipino-ness away to escape the discomfort and stigma of being seen as inferior. So we shrink ourselves and we wear a mask to survive. So, how do we actually fix this? Because if you go to a traditional Western therapist, for example, which I did at the beginning of my journey here, we were recommended to go to our own therapy sessions for our own well being. But then again, these Western therapists do not really understand our culture nor our history. And sometimes you will become the historian when you go to therapy because you have to explain to them about what happened to us. And honestly, there are a lot of like counseling programs, actually majority of the counseling programs in here, majority of the psychology programs do not really include our own indigenous psychology in the program. So a lot of like even the Filipino American therapists or the Filipino Canadian therapists that you will meet they don't even know our own indigenous psychology or psikologiyang Filipino. And I will discuss that in another video. But again, if you go to a Western trained therapist, they might tell you to just be an individual or just be yourself, right? Or just cut off toxic family members and prioritize self-actualization. But the problem with that is traditional Western psychology, again, was built not for us. It was for the colonizer, not the colonized. And again, I know some of you are like, well, I had to cut off family members because they're abusive. And of course, right? Like, I am not talking about that. If you are being abused, if you are being exploited, you need to have the lakas ng loob and the thing called pakikibaka, which again, I will discuss in another video. And you have to protect yourself. This is not what I'm talking about here. Okay? There is no excuse for violence. And I will put a disclaimer to explain a little bit more about that. Anyway, going back to the video, the revolutionary psychiatrist Frantz Fanon warned us about this decades ago. Fanon observed that colonialism builds a strictly divided society, and he wrote, "The colonial world is a world cut into two, obedient to the rules of the pure Aristotelian logic, and they both follow the principle of reciprocal exclusivity." So in a world cut into two, the colonizer is the standard of humanity. And us Filipinos, the colonized, and the other colonized groups is treated as the problem. Because mainstream Western psychology operates in that same world, it often misreads our cultural traits. For instance, I have a client before who went to a white therapist, and she explained to the white therapist on sometimes how our parents would get so involved with our own stuff, but they also don't understand about the Kapwa, about the levels of interactions in our culture, and that white therapist called her mom a narcissist. And she even told me that yeah, I know that my mom's not a narcissist, she just really loves me and all that stuff. But again, they can misconstrue our interconnectedness either as codependency, narcissism, and sometimes they will call our indirect communication dishonest. And this is exactly why Dr. Virgilio Enriquez championed psikologiyang Pilipino or Filipino psychology. He said that we couldn't just translate these Western textbooks into Tagalog, and we couldn't just let these Western scholars dictate what our own psychology is about. He argued that the true healing requires looking for the indigenous psychology from within the culture itself, not just clothing a foreign body with a local dress. So to heal from colonial mentality, we have to return to the core of who we are. And the absolute center of that Filipino psyche is, you guessed it, it's our kapwa, our shared identity. So scholars Rogelia Pepua and Elizabeth Protasio Marcelino remind us that to truly understand our psychology, one simply has to examine the attitudes, the beliefs, the values, and practices of the Filipino and give importance to the Filipino's personhood and aspirations as a people. And our ancestors knew that we do not end where our skin ends, because we are our community, and this even extends to our inang Kalikasan, to Mother Nature, to our environment. As researcher Carl Lauren Cervantes points out, Filipinos consider their relationship with nature and their community not only as part of the supernatural phenomena, but also as part of their wide cosmic context, cultivating a deep sense of respect and harmony among all entities. So Mother Nature, again, is not property because she is our kapwa. Decolonizing our minds means dropping the warped colonial mirror that makes us feel inferior. And it means reclaiming our kapwa and looking at ourselves through our own ancestral eyes. So if this resonated with you and you truly want to dissect how to unlearn these colonial systems and dive deep into the theories of psikologiyang Pilipino and liberation psychology, I have an upcoming workshop in August called the Unlearning the Colonized Mind. There's only a few more slots available, and we will put it in the disclaimer. If it's already sold out by the time you watch this video, we will also link a waitlist in there for the next upcoming one. We don't know when it's going to happen yet. Or you can also join our community at the Healing Collective, where we talk about these things on a regular basis, about decolonizing, about our healing, and about our inner child as well. Again, remember, your roots are deep and you were never meant to heal alone. We will see you in the next one.